Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 4 key game picks. Before we get into those picks, thoughts from week number 3. Now, right now, I know there's a lot of things going on right now. Before I wanted to get into those quick thoughts, I know it's mostly political right now. What's been happening here? I mean, everybody would know by now what has happened, with the comments made by President Trump and the NFL athletes taking knees and all that. I really don't want to get into that kind of political discussion right now, but the only thing I want to say about that is that my quick saying is that the NFL players, thanks to the First Amendment, they have a right to protest. What more can you do? And everybody's upset over disrespecting the flag or something like that. But hey, they do also have a right to protest. That's all I'm gonna say here. It's a lot. It's a complicated issue that really right now it's a whole nother debate and this endless debate and discussion about that. I just my job here is to give NFL picks. Okay, I don't want to get too political about this or anything else for that matter. But obviously that was the main headline. I mean, it was really one of the things I know that it's a discussion that, yes, I do agree that we need to have a debate over. But I'm not going to do it here because I'm here to give you NFL picks. That's what I'm here for. And I think from what happened in week number 3 in terms of NFL games and all, it was a good week of NFL action we had in week number 3. As we, other than politically what's going on right now. But the games really did help a lot. They really did. A lot of close games that happened. Texans Patriots went down to the wire. Patriots, I first thought they were going to lose that game, but hey, give Tom Brady credit. He still knows how to mount comebacks. Couple of upsets that I've noticed. Washington beating the Raiders. I mean, it was one of my upset picks, and I nailed that one. That one was, well, I wasn't too surprised by that because the Raiders' defense is still a question, and I knew they would have problems. That didn't come to me as a surprise. Cowboys getting back on track after they had a dismal first half in that game against the Cardinals, which I was surprised that it took until the second half for the Cowboys to come back in that game. Other than teams that are 3-0, like that the Chiefs are also 3-0. Atlanta's 3-0. They really, I mean, I know there's a lot of controversy going on in that game between Atlanta and Detroit. What happened at the end of the game, where one of the referees said it was a 10-second runoff after the Lions did not get a touchdown, and it was a fourth down play. They said from what I read in the rule book, it said that it did say that if it was a fourth down play, and I didn't quite buy the 10-second runoff. I mean, I would figure that if it was fourth down play, shouldn't Atlanta have the ball and take a knee? Where does it say there would be a 10-second runoff? I mean, I was a little bit confused about that. I mean, that was pretty controversial, and I thought the Lions won that game, and that should have been a touchdown, but his knees were down before that ball reached the goal line. That, I don't know. I mean, that was a bit of controversy right there, but other than that, we did have a lot of games went down to the wire. 2 games went into overtime. Yeah, it kind of was a good, and you can't forget about Elliott's kick. Elliott's 61 or 62-yard field goal for the Eagles that they beat the Giants in that game. So yeah, it was a good welcome, to help bring in some good football. And, a lot of things are going on in this country right now, and a lot of it is political. But other than that, it was a great week of good football games, and I'm glad that we had a good week a good week 3 of the NFL. All right, let's get into my picks, and I want to try to get this done as quickly as possible here. Key game number 1. Let's begin with the Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. Lines are even for this game. The football lines for this game are even, but don't be surprised if there will be a favorite by the time Sunday comes around. Now, obviously, going back to the controversy, I know Detroit is distraught over that, and I do agree that there shouldn't have been a 10-second runoff there. I think that if it was a fourth down play, I originally thought that Atlanta should have got the ball and just took a knee or whatever. But Detroit had amount of second half comeback, almost amount of second half comeback to almost beat the Falcons, and I thought they did beat them. But in this sort of case here, you're playing a divisional opponent now. This is a, even though it's only week number 4, this is kind of a really key game in the NFC North because you want to keep pace. You don't want to fall further behind. One of these two teams cannot fall further behind in the standings right now, especially if Green Bay's starting to get on a roll. For this game now, Minnesota, they did a number on the Buccaneers. It took them a while to get their offense back intact, but this is a game that I know it's going to be a much tougher game for the Vikings here. Detroit and Minnesota pretty much are evenly matched here. The lines are even for this game, and it's a very tough pick here. Who wins this game here? Because there's no favorite, I mean, and this is not a sure pick here, because both offenses really turned it around in their respective games last week. Matthew Stafford finally really putting on an amount comeback. I mean, he's done this before, but let's just see what happens in this game against the Vikings. The Vikings, after coming out, this is going to be really their toughest test for this week here. I mean, this is an evenly matched game. Offenses are even. Defenses are even. So yeah, you can go either way in this game here. As far as who I'm going to pick in this game, I'm going to pick the Detroit Lions here. I think they will get back on track here. I think they'll put what happened last week behind them against the Falcons, and I think, to me, they will win in a very, very close game here. Expect a close game, and don't be surprised if this game goes back and forth here. I'll pick the Lions here. This is not a sure pick here, but I'm going to stick with it. Lions over the Vikings. Key game number 2, Pittsburgh Steelers against the Baltimore Ravens. Steelers are a 3-point favorite in this one. That number will definitely come down a lot lower. Now, Pittsburgh, surprisingly, that was one of the shockers last week, losing in overtime to the Bears. Bears were not a good team, and really, Pittsburgh really they laid an egg in that game, despite the game being close, and despite having a comeback in the second half. But in all honesty, though, offensively, they struggled big time in that game, which really should not happen. Bears are not that good of a team, and yet the Bears still ended up winning. For Baltimore, after getting blown out in London last week, you come back home, no bye week here, and you have to play a game against the Steelers here and your divisional opponent here. Obviously, this is control for first place here in the AFC North Division, and I predicted in my description in the beginning of these videos at the first week that I had Pittsburgh winning and Baltimore being a wild card spot. So obviously right now this is for control of first place in the AFC North Division, and it is key right now, as well as for both teams to keep pace. Pittsburgh's offense, hopefully let's see if they don't struggle this week. Baltimore's offense wasn't that great either. So this is another game that's pretty evenly matched here in terms of offense. Defense-wise, they're about evenly matched too. So another hard pick here, and it is a key game because it's a divisional game for these two teams. But I'm gonna go with the Pittsburgh Steelers here. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers bounce back here. Baltimore they do have some problems up front on the offensive line here. That really, Joe Flacco really had a hard time passing last week against the Jaguars. And this is why I think the offensive line struggles for Baltimore. They're going to be a problem unless they didn't get that fixed, and that's why I'm going with the Steelers in this game. But expect a close game here and a very low-scoring game here. The way these two teams played, expect a low-scoring game here. But I'll take Pittsburgh by a field goal here, and that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to pick the Steelers over the Ravens. Key game number 3, a big one in the AFC West. The Raiders against the Broncos. Broncos, 2.5-point favorite. It'll probably go to 2 points by game time. Now, Raiders coming off a dismal game last week against the Redskins, and that, to me, was not a surprise. I wasn't surprised by that. I knew that the Raiders' defense was a question. It's like a roller coaster. You go up and you go down. Does their defense step up here against Denver? Now, Denver lost surprisingly last week against Buffalo. But, really, Denver's good at home. They're a good home team. And the Raiders have always had trouble winning in Denver. And this is why I think, I could see why the Raiders' offense is just a little bit tad better. But I think because Denver has a much better defense, even though I know a lot of you are going to say, well, they didn't show up last week. Okay, yeah. But I think this game here, Denver's defense is going to be a huge factor in this game. I think, to me, they're really going to give Derek Carr a ton of problems in this game. And this is why I'm going with the Denver Broncos here. The Denver Broncos, they're good at home. And they're one of the best NFL teams with home field advantage here. I mean, just because I know a lot of you say, well, the Raiders have a much better offense, I think they'll win. I think, to me, their defense is going to be is still having issues here. They seem to have trouble with the pass rush against running defense. I mean, they're pretty average in terms of run defense. And I think, to me, Denver, is just a much better, is going to be the team I think will win this game here. I think because the Raiders defense, I think, is having problems, and I think that's the reason why I'm picking the Broncos in this one here. Broncos over the Raiders. And key game number 4, it is the Washington Redskins at the Kansas City Chiefs. Big win last week for the Redskins, really getting their offense intact here, but they got a much tougher task here against the Kansas City Chiefs here, who definitely have one of the best running game in all of the league right now. They really did a number on the Chargers, which was not a surprise because the Chargers, they stink this year. I wasn't surprised by that. Even though they struggled in the first half against the Chargers, but really they lit it up in the second half, which I wasn't surprised by that. They really their defense really gave Phillip Rivers a tough time passing. But I think for this one here, I mean, you gotta love the home field advantage in Kansas City. They're good at home. They're good at home too. But the way this team is intact right now, they're a much better team than they have been in years. Washington, I think they're going to have their hands full against a good Kansas City running game. Hunt really has become a big-time factor in their offense, and I think that is the reason why I'm going with Kansas City here. I think their running game is going to really wear out the Washington defense here, and this is why. But this is a game I probably see it sort of close, but I think Kansas City wins big in the second half of this game. I don't think it'll be much of a game here. It might be close in the first half, but Kansas City will run away with it in the second half here. And this is why I'm going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs here. They are a 7-point favorite in this one. I kind of agree with that. I don't think it'll be much lower than that. And I'm going to stick with it. Chiefs over the Redskins. All right, everybody, that wraps up my picks for week number 4. For all of my NFL week 4 picks, go to thesportblog.blogspot.com. All my picks will be there. And I'll see you guys next week when I talk about my picks for week number 5. Until then, take care and enjoy your football weekend.